since we have people online, I can start with general introduction and welcome to our first Meet the Expert session. So far, all of you probably have joined in the asynchronous part of this course, which is the lectures that we have online and the readings of this course. So thank you for that. Just to recap what has been happening in week 1, I will share a presentation. Can you see this? Okay. Okay, for our meeting, it will last 1.5 hours approximately. So after these welcome messages, we have, I would like to introduce you to the experts. You all know Professor Michael Scoullos from MIO, the University of Athens, the UNESCO chair, and the coordinator, the chairman of the Greek UNESCO MAB committee. We have from UNESCO Venice Samuel Partey, who was with us also in phase A. Hopefully he will join. He had also a lecture during this week regarding the droughts. Mr. Arnaud, who is the local chair of the Asterousia Biosphere Reserve, called me some minutes ago to tell me that she's working with the mayor. They are developing a project proposal actually for the BR, so she will update us on this aspect later when she joins. And we have now the opportunity with the experts and together with all of you, because many of you are managers and experts yourselves in your biosphere reserves or in geoparks or wherever you work, to exchange, to respond to your questions, and starting from your questions to engage in a dialogue of around the issues of this course, which is of course around integrated water resources management. So we record the session in order to make it available to the people that cannot make it right now online. However, we will appreciate if you would like to have your camera on so we can see your faces, because also we know many of you. Have your microphone off. Leave your chat box open in case you want to. Here is Samuel. In case you want to pose your own questions, we would appreciate if you could remove all distractions, and rather than multitasking, concentrate to our dialogue. So our e-course in numbers, we are very happy that this year we had more than 150 applications from 50 countries. I think we have all the Mediterranean, or the majority of the Mediterranean countries. They're highlighted in blue color. Already, I checked some minutes ago, 64 have logged in to follow the content of week 1, and 15 of you have posed questions to the experts about your profile. As usual in such courses, the majority is women, so we are about 2/3 women and 1/3 men, male. And many of you are university students or researchers. Many managers we have this year, also some staff, except from biosphere reserves, we have some staff from geoparks, even UNESCO chair. There was one applicant from UNESCO chair, a staff of NGOs and youth organizations working at the local level. We have also teachers, both formal and non-formal, a lawyer and a municipality officer. So it's an interesting mix of participants. And one of the first questions to you regarded your expectations. So I tried to group your expectations after reading them. Some of you talk about the international settings, so you want to be informed about the international regulations, what difference different challenges various countries face as regards to water, and also to widen your network, to come in contact with the UNESCO designation and the UNESCO sites. Some of you have explicit expectations about the biosphere reserves regarding the nomination. In week one, we talk about the nomination, exploring the effectiveness of BR governance and conservation efforts, sharing amongst you, since many of you are already BR staff. Many of you ask about how we can transfer or apply what we learn in such a course to our local setting. So, how to get the ownership of the locals, to get them with us, to let them know of the problems, and to get them engaged. Um, a lot of you also expect findings through the case studies. So you want to know more through the explicit case studies we have in our course. Already we have some. In week two, we have more case studies. So you're looking for methods combining practical solutions and scientific research. Many of you, even if you are educators or not, you ask for education and awareness. So you want to learn about best practices, how you can engage your local residents, also the visitors to the BR, about the problems, the challenges, and the values of the BR. And a few of you, surprisingly few, talk about the risks of the climate change. So here is the overview, the outline. All of you have come across that. This is the first week. So in this week, we go through the broader SDG agenda. We focus on the SDG 6 and talk about the water risks. We give the overview of the MAP program of UNESCO. We talk about the nomination process and the functions of the BR. And we start to talk about the management, from environmental management to sustainable development management, and what are the differences. We talk also about some problem of droughts in specific UNESCO sites, and we get to know the Asterousia Biosphere Reserve, which was the host of phase A and has been for a number of years now. So in the interactive part, you yourselves can pose questions or express your views. So if you can just open the chat and right now, those of you that are online, how much you have progressed with the e-course content of week one. So if it's not at all, you haven't yet logged in, click 0. If you started but you're taking baby steps still, click 1. If you're almost done, click 2. And if you are have completed the learning material, click 3. And if Vicky can help me with the outcomes of this mini poll.
Yes, it seems that most of the people are almost done. A lot of twos, a few threes, and the sincere ones. I have started few, but it seems that the majority has almost completed the content of our first week.
Yes, I have had this impression because I got some nudges also about some broken links of the course. We try to fix this and be responsive to them. One of the first questions posed to you had to do with what sustainability means to you in your work context or your family context, your life, at the stage where you are now. So the top, the most frequent word coming in your definitions of sustainability is the word balance, which is something new. Usually it's the future generations that comes first, and seeing to the future generations and ensuring that they have enough resources is something that comes up. A lot of you talk about the ecosystems and the need to protect them and maintain them, and also how it is important for us to connect to the biodiversity and for our own well-being. A lot of you talk about the interconnectedness of systems, of species, and how actions we take in one area affect other areas. Which you talk about equity, also responsibility, responsible consumption, responsible decision making, and that we need to have in mind the long-term impacts of our action. Um, Many of you also talk about the integration, the holistic approach we have around sustainable development. So it's a kind of development embracing economic, cultural, and social development. You talked about the collective action, the value of community engagement. A lot of you talk about how sustainability can be implemented at a local level and also at a personal level, also through mindfulness and reflective action. Before I close this presentation, I just want to remind you, remember to complete and to click on this button, complete and continue, that you can find at the bottom of each unit. As we open the new content next week, the content of week 1 will remain open, so you can keep browsing and discovering stuff. Please remember when you address questions to ask to whom you address to your questions, because this makes it easier for them to respond to you. And remember that the more active you are, the more it's the content of this course is, and the more we can learn from each other. And I hope I didn't take a lot of time. I will stop sharing and give the floor to Professor Scoullos and Samuel.
Samuel, yeah, if you wish, you can take first the floor.
No, you can go ahead, Prof. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It's a great pleasure having you all here. We have several questions. Some of these questions are more specific, others are more general, and perhaps there is only one question addressed to Samuel, namely the other questions are addressed to both of us, I believe. So I don't know if Samuel, you want to start with this particular question about the metrics or indicators we use to assess progress of SDG 6 in biosphere reserve, and how can we make this data more accessible to the public to understand risks. I will also try to provide some answer, but if you wish to start.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, Prof. So within the Man in the Biosphere program, we've started building, some database around, the biosphere reserves. So normally before an area is designated, there are some baselines, feasibility studies that are conducted to really justify the candidacy of the area as a biosphere reserve, and we look at issues pertaining to biodiversity, whether there are some species that are threatened to extinction. We look at the ecosystem services. We look at the cultural significance, socioeconomic parameters, and others. So these are all put into perspective in trying to endorse an area as a biosphere reserve. And so these status, they have to be maintained. So that means that the ecological, social, political integrity of the sites, they have to be preserved, in such a way that they will continue to qualify to be within the terms and regulations governing the endorsement of the areas as a biosphere reserve. And so we have some key indicators, and sometimes we leave this to the countries, but I think at HQ there's a new initiative to build a database around that. So as countries conduct their monitoring exercises as part of the review process, we take the data that they are collecting and put into this database. But again, if you look at the biodiversity indicators that have been recommended as part of the Kunming-Montreal biodiversity framework, we don't do anything aside what has been globally approved. And so it's the same kind of indicator that we also use. We also use some of the indicators from IUCN when it comes to really positioning species, where they lie in terms of whether they are being threatened, whether they are being endangered, and all that, in order to inform some conservation actions within the biosphere reserve. So it's the same kind of indicators that we use. And of course, these indicators are also very well aligned with the appropriate SDG indicators. So it's the same thing. But as I said, there's a database that is being developed at the moment, and it's going to be an open resource. In some of the countries, they also have a citizen science approach to collecting this information, and they have developed some apps and working with the local communities to be able to collect relevant data. So once this is done, I'm sure that it's going to become accessible to the general public. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, and let me complement this with experiences also from Europe. As Samuel said, we don't have specific metrics and indicators for MAB, and we rely, and this is normal, to the systems of the countries, adopting from time to time, if needed, some indicators proposed by other organizations like IUCN or AMSAR. But in principle, we use the indicators, particularly as it concerns your question is SDG 6 on water, where we need to have indicators related to the status of the quality of water, the ecological quality and the chemical. In Europe and also to some extent in the rest of the Mediterranean, that follows as blueprint or as source of inspiration, the European directives. We have at least for the core and buffer that in most cases include the Natura 2000 sites. The legislation, the standards, the values that are described in the Natura 2000 directive. So we have there a number of indicators, and these are accepted, are already in place according to the European legislation. So for the European countries of the Mediterranean, we have the same as are described in the Natura 2000. And there we have the good environmental status, and there are some biological and some chemical indicators. This is all what we have at the moment, and what Samuel mentioned, this registry or this collection of different monitoring, the results of monitoring, hopefully will help us to have a more clear picture of where we are. But you understand that in the different countries, in the different natural conditions, different temperatures, and so on and so forth, even these parameters cannot be the same. We have obviously different, let's say, reaction of the different species. The ecotoxicology is different in the different bodies according to the different temperatures, different light conditions, and so on and so forth. So in general, in the biosphere reserves, we follow more or less the national approaches, and we try to see if we can have progressively some more clear indicators, at least for the different zones. We are not yet there. Now, there are a number of other questions. So if you agree, Samuel, I try one by one or two together, and you intervene at any time you wish. And the same is also for you. If you have an additional question or addition to what we are saying, we may discuss. It is a very interactive session, and many of you have a lot of experience, or you may have more questions. One of the questions I have, and these are listed in a chronological order, in the order you raise them. Very technical is the role of the small dams. We have discussed about small-scale dams constructed even in Asterousia around the mountain. And the question is, won't they affect the biodiversity and ecosystem adaptability? The answer is cannot be a straight no. We believe that when we are talking about really small dams, and we are talking about dams that they are not more than 1.5 meters. And many of these dams, if you observe them, are in some way using also stones, and they are not, they allow for some actually leakage. So they are practically detention and retention systems. Very few of them are there to keep big quantities of water for the entire summer, let's say. So these systems in general fluctuate a lot and do not have the problems of the big dams. However, for some species, we might have some difficulties, but in general, we have no evidence of real problems. Of course, because they are small, you need to replace them or clean them from time to time, because of course, even if they are small, they collect sediment. In this way, even marginally, they affect somehow the transport of inert material, sediment, and topsoil that they keep there. What we found useful, based on field work we had in Tunisia, is that this sometimes the cost of cleaning even these small dams is bigger than building a new one. So in many cases, they do build another when it is filled with sediment. We found out that it's more ecological and better to clean the dam and take this fertile soil and give it to the farmers or spread it. And this is very is rich in nutrients, and the farmers really like that. So the cost, if you take this into account and treat it as, let's say, a kind of fertilizer, then the real cost is reduced. So these are the only things I know about these small dams, and the benefits are by far more than eventual limitations. I don't know if Sam has something to add on that from his experience. If some of you wish to say something on that.
When we say a small dam, what should we imagine?
We imagine something like, as I said, not higher than 1.5 meters, and usually what you create, in many cases, you have similar things as with dry stones for the terraces. Imagine an empty terrace, more or less. And in many cases, you can use soil and stones for that. So there are retention systems for a period of time, not fully, they are to some extent permeable, and you try to use them in areas where naturally you see accumulation of water. So you just use the geomorphology and help the water to remain there for longer periods. Sometimes you have to put, you have to have a membrane, so to keep the water for longer periods, part of the summer. So these are the types of dams we suggest for a biosphere reserve.
Thank you.
So the other question we have is that I don't understand very well is what is a good size to pilot integrated water management in a biosphere reserve? What was the size of best practice cases? Well, here we need is an interesting question, if I understand the question well. The answer is there is no specific size. The integrated management affects the entire, should take into account the entire catchment area, even a small catchment area, but the entire. So if the catchment area is big, the management takes all this area into account. If it is small, again. So the geomorphology defines the size. Don't forget that integrated management starts with balancing, and this is very nice that balance came up in the sustainability. First of all, in balancing the allocation of water to the different stakeholders, including as a stakeholder the ecosystems, the environment. So we see how in this area, how we can accommodate the needs of the system and the people who live there. If we are talking about the core, this is easier because you don't have many users. But if we are talking about the entire biosphere reserve, we need to take into account also the needs of the communities, the needs of farmers, the needs of fishermen, and so on and so forth. And of course, the ecological flow in the system and the ecosystems themselves. So what if I don't have enough water in the biosphere reserve? This is what we have discussed in Asterousia, and we had many of the communities expressing their views from proposing to take even more water from the groundwater, or to bring water from another area, or to use non-conventional water resources, which is one of the solutions. That means since we have communities, we have also wastewater, and therefore the treated wastewater is an important and valuable resource. The same is with in some cases with desalination, where we suggest, of course, the use of renewable energies there. So when this shows that we cannot say that this is the best size, a good size, but we have to address the size according to the natural borders of the catchment area and what is included in this area. One of the important elements here is that in the past, a lot of the missing water was supplied from the groundwater. Now we see that we have problems with salinization, and there is a question somewhere by someone else. And also we need now to use storm water and floods to recharge the aquifers. And we need to do that sometimes through the same retention and detention systems that may act as small dams. So in some cases, these areas, sometimes natural or man-made, could actually keep water for long periods, allowing also this water to recharge the aquifer. And when we have this kind of systems in the biosphere reserve, we have a win-win situation. In some cases, we can have extra water from treated wastewater to recharge the aquifer and use it during the summer months. So this, we need sometimes we recharge the aquifer in order to use it as a reservoir, to use it during the periods of low precipitation and drought.
Now that you mention it, sorry to interrupt because there was an question in the chat regarding the aspect of evaporation. If there is any solution, any idea about the reduction of how to reduce the evaporation of water in these small dams? Don't know if you have any experience.
In the small dams, to a certain extent, we want to have some of the evaporation is within the system to keep the humidity. In bigger dams, there are technical solutions to reduce that. One of the solutions is using chemicals to reduce the evaporation. So we make, let's say, a surface of that acts as a barrier. They say that they have checked this not to affect the quality of the water, but this is perhaps the only applicable, widely applicable way. In some other cases now, they are using these surfaces to have also on top to have the photovoltaics. So the photovoltaics make a shade, reducing the temperature, the surface temperature, and also economizing space, otherwise covering land. And in this way, you have a win-win situation where actually you use the shadow created by the photovoltaics to reduce the temperature of these water bodies. Now, there is, I leave a question for some time.
Maybe I step in to just to read another question that is addressed to Sam, and it came in the chat.
Yes,
so
yes.
it's coming from Nicola from Orchid Prespa Biosphere Reserve that is experiencing a lot of negative challenges as a result of human activities, and how, if you have any ideas, how an NGO can apply the territorial laboratory MAB program to engage civil society sector and local community to a BR. I think this question doesn't concern only Orchid Perspa, it's something that concerns many BRs.
Well, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier on, the biosphere reserves can lose their status if the functions that makes them eligible to be endorsed as biosphere reserves are compromised, and so you can have all sort of activities that can impact negatively on the biosphere reserves, and we get a lot of requests, and our attentions are drawn on many activities. Some even very political in such a way that we have to really use a high level of diplomacy to deal with them. So I will say that these human activities would have to be recorded. So if you are an NGO, you have to understand that the biosphere reserves, they provide some legal binding around their conservation. And so if the core zones that are supposed to be untouched, are now being touched, or through some unsustainable activities, then the attention of the biosphere reserves managers have to be drawn, because we have a whole institutional arrangement around the biosphere reserve. So it's very important that the relevant stakeholders are brought on board in really analyzing exactly what these activities are, and making sure that the right solution is applied. I think, and then when it becomes very difficult, then I think the MAP Secretariat can also be brought into this. So I would say that um, first engage with local actors, and making sure that you are able to communicate exactly what the problem is. And I'm sure there should be a way that they can deal with it. Thanks.
We can't hear you. Can you unmute?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. And the question is actually very similar or related to another question here: how to follow a pathway for true water management by local agencies. Where should the local agencies begin for water management from? Linking the previous and also the previous two questions. Actually, the management starts from where we have more knowledge. In any case, what is absolutely necessary in a biosphere reserve for the management is to have a balance, to have a quantity balance first, so we know what is the supply, what is the water supply, the available water, and what is, on the other hand, the demand. And this demand is something that could be monitored. We may have demand management, and we have supply management. So these two need to be balanced, taking into account also the needed water for the ecosystems, a major part in a biosphere reserve. This is only one part, because we need to have good quality water, because we may have water but of poor quality, and therefore not good neither for human consumption nor for the ecosystem itself. By the way, there are many species that are much more vulnerable than humans. And this is why we have ecotoxicology, and there are many, many species that are, potable water is not good enough for some of the species. So we need to understand perfectly this relationship, and this is something from where we start. We start balancing supply and demand, taking into account also the quality of the different bodies and the available water. Now, when another question that is, what will be the effects of degraded wetlands in some countries, and how they can mount some strategies to curb this situation? It's very difficult to answer because all wetlands, the wetlands are different, from fresh waters to brackish and even saline waters. It's very difficult to describe. Some general categories, however, I mean, systematizing some of these systems could allow us to, let's say, put a number of criteria. What is important and critical is that the wetland, whatever is its type, has a critical volume, a critical area. It is connected. Its connectivity with other systems around is secured, is not inhibited. The differences within the area are maintained. The diversity of subsystems is secured there. Also, we need for all these areas to assess the pressures, particularly the permanent pressures. I'm talking about withdrawal of species or of water or whatever, additions, particularly pollution, pressures that change the characteristics, turbidity, for example. If it is natural, we have to keep it. But if it is something that is a human, let's say, intervention, should be avoided. So we need to know very well the background, the natural system, and this has something to do also for a biosphere reserve with, as Samuel said, also with the background studies we present when the area is accepted as a biosphere reserve, so that we can go back and see if there is an improvement or if there is a degradation, and decide on that. So based on that, we decide the strategies of what we are going to do. For example, what is the situation of the plants around or in the area? It's not certain that always we want the plants there. For example, if we allow an area with no management, a lake will be filled with plants, and in a while it will be just land. So many times we need to intervene against inverted commas nature, keeping the state as it is, because it is a climax, and we want to keep it at this level, a very steady state. So this is very important. It is not easy to give more general, let's say, strategies, to describe more general strategies. If there are any questions, just stop me. Well, there is a question about how something about the invasive species. The one is, are there any suggestions on how the state can take effective action to control invasive alien species? nationwide education campaigns are clearly not enough. It is true, there are different strategies for the different types of alien species. Here we are talking about plants. I may say that this is easier than invasive, let's say, fishes species. The first one of the general things is to avoid introducing, and there is in the customs that there should be a control of species imported, also with the pets and what is sold in different, and the same is also with plants that are introduced in some areas. And the other is, of course, to unroot the invasive species at the beginning, when there are still few around. Unfortunately, there are not that many other ways for the state to support. They have to invest money on that. Apart, and citizen science and citizens interventions, of course, are valuable. We have something about salinization.
I think Sam wants to
Yes.
respond also to that question.
Yeah, thanks very much, Prof. I think, I'm trying to be in the shoes of, a citizen who has heard people talk about invasive species. As you said, with the, floral is a bit, easy because we can see the plants. And I did some research on, a species called the Mexican sunflower, that grows on the highlands of Western Kenya. And this is, as the name sounds, Mexican sunflower. So this is something that is coming from Mexico. And apparently somebody had, because of the beautiful flowers, somebody had planted it in some graveyards, in Kenya. And then it ended up, growing profusely in all the areas and extending on farmlands. And something that scientists said was very invasive and moving all over the place and growing very high in farmlands became like a natural fertilizer also to farmers, because they discovered that any crop that grows around this plant also did very well, especially when it comes to phosphorus deficiency, addressing phosphorus deficiency. And so I think the whole issue about invasive species, it needs a lot of research. It's not about discovering that we have a species that is not endemic in this country, or is something that is coming from outside somewhere. And I think that it has to be put in the right context, in terms of, how the environmental damages or socioeconomic damages that it brings in the system. And I think this is the reason why a lot of people don't pay so much attention about invasive species. And I know that, when you get to the airports and you are carrying even seeds, flowers, it has to go through some, sanitary inspection and all that, because no country wants to have, different species introduced in there. But I think if we really want to improve public education, I think the scientific community would have to effectively communicate, what are the the pros and cons associated with invasive species. And I think this is one part that is not really very clear out there. We identify the species, but in terms of damages in terms of how they compromise on ecosystem services, how they suppress very useful species that are endemic in a country or in an ecosystem. I think this needs a bit of research in order to facilitate public education. Thanks.
We can't hear you.
Yes, I very much agree. We need to remember that this is very true for agriculture, where we have many species introduced um, with benefits for the society, and for the demands in nutrients or adaptability to saline or brackish waters or whatever. And this is true in general, that we need to understand much better. It is, however, a little bit more difficult. I think you'll agree, Sam, in a biosphere reserve, and particularly in a core area, where we need to a priori to try to maintain the specific ecological characters of protected areas. So there we need to be a little bit more strict in what new species may appear. And this is why we need to make a difference between understanding the different species in a natural system, if it is an issue of agriculture, or even invasion of a species that is not particularly dangerous, or occupying the space of others, and the specific characteristics of a protected area, where we try to keep the systems to maintain the systems. So this is something where we need to stress, let's say, the importance of trying to avoid changes in the biota in these areas. But all these are under, as it was said, under science. We need to have a better understanding of the science of that, and this is no doubt the key recommendation here. Actually, I had a question that I don't know how to reply about. I read it, just wondering why the removal of invasive species disturb our indigenous plants so much around our wetland. What's the movement and behavior underground? Perhaps, I don't know if someone wants to clarify, if you are among us, to clarify what exactly. Just wondering why the removal of invasive species disturb our indigenous plants. I don't understand that. Perhaps I cannot answer it.
Yeah, I don't know whether that could be related to the control, or trying to because I know that, sometimes when these things happened, in order to stop, let's say, the growth of an invasive species, there are some, management systems that are in place. And sometimes, even though they are able to effectively deal, it's like when you have weeds on your farms and you are trying to use a weedicide, the weed is not needed, but the crop is needed. But if you are not careful, then you apply, a chemical that can also kill the crop that you want to keep, even though you are trying to control the weed. So if it is in line with such a question, then I think um, that is true, because sometimes you want to deal with invasive species, but you can end up also destroying some indigenous species. But I think this is something that um, would have to be subjected to investigation, because here we don't know the context by which this question is posed. But certainly it could be due to maybe the control measures for these invasive species. If the control measures are in such a way that they can also affect indigenous species, then they have to be changed. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I think this is the yes. There is one more question related to what we have already discussed. What could be effective strategies to ensure that policies related to biosphere reserves are addressed and implemented by local agencies and institutions? So the question is how local agencies and institutions implement effectively strategies to ensure and policies for the biosphere reserves. And this is because indeed we have a lot of sometimes many guidelines or even rules that are not properly implemented. So the elements I can say, first of all, we need knowledge and commitment, first of all, from the local authorities. That means that they need trainings and retrainings, because people come and go, and also political will, commitment from the political leadership that controls actually the area. And how we can do that? Apart from training, I think the involvement of citizens helps, because if the presence and the awareness of citizens acts as monitoring of the activities of the authorities and the administration. And also we have some international tools. Again, we have it mostly, but in many parts of the world we have similar things. In Europe, and now we try for the entire Mediterranean, we have the Aarhus Convention, the Convention of UNEC for access to environmental information, public participation, and even justice on environmental issues. So in many cases, NGOs or even individual citizens have, first of all, asked for information, and if this information is not provided, they can actually go to the court. Or if this information is wrong or not provided. So this is a way to keep, let's say, always an eye on the implementation of the legislation, of the rules, and the proper management of an area. In some countries, this is difficult. In other countries, it's more easy. We try to generalize that, to have it as much as possible as part of the democratic rights and of the environmental rights of citizens and societies. Now we come next week to a question which is very political, but I'm going to read it.
If I can just comment on the last question, also I was thinking while you were referring to it, maybe to the role of the press, journalists that we can use. There are allies, sometimes we forget, and the media, which is a little bit hostile in our days, but let's not forget that we can make use of this very important tool, which is the media and the internet and even the influencers. So we can rethink of it. And also I was thinking about schools, because we have also teachers attending this course, and there were some questions about how and expectations, how they can integrate the whole BR mindset within the school. So even schools and teachers can be, an ally, an informal ambassador, pushing in an informal way for this policy. Just some thoughts, and I see Sam also wants to say something.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so this reminds me of a study that we conducted before the COP16 on biological diversity, and trying to see in a number of countries, just doing a control F search, in several policy and strategy documents on biodiversity and climate change, and trying to see which of them mentions biosphere reserves. And we found out that, even if we use synonymous terms, it was really hard to find biosphere reserves, mentioned in these, policy documents. And this wasn't, surprising to me, because, sorry, I think you hear the background noise, right? Let me close my office. No, you don't hear? Okay. Okay, then that's perfect. So even though we have, the importance of the biosphere reserves in terms of, biological functions, socioeconomic functions, and how it can support countries in achieving their international commitments on climate change, on biodiversity. I think the way it is pitched, because if it is pitched in a very different way by which, like, national parks are being recognized, and even, local governments, budget for the management of these parks, then it will be very difficult for anybody to try to follow any policies or conventions around biosphere reserves. So I think there's a need to integrate it into the policies and strategies on biodiversity and climate change. And the countries needs to have evidence on how having a biosphere reserve can contribute or can facilitate achievement of your own national commitments to, these international milestones on biodiversity and climate change. I think this is really, really very important, because having a biosphere reserve puts a country on the global map, but it is not enough. If we want governments to budget for management of, biosphere reserves, if we want to, make sure that, local governments have the management of these areas as part of their national or, local development plans, then the evidence of how, these reserves contribute to their own commitments to climate change, and how it facilitates achievement of the SDGs. I think this has to be clear, and I think this is what we are not doing very well on. And at UNESCO as an institution, we are trying to now, look at, the science policy interface of biosphere reserves, and how we can create a roadmap or a path in making sure that it is mainstreamed into policies on environment in the countries that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that, Sam. It is a lot of work we need to do also internally within UNESCO and UN system. Is the right moment now, with all the commitments we have for expanding the protected areas, also going even beyond national jurisdiction and all these kind of things. But at the same time, we don't have adequate resources in place, adequate staff to do that. And this is really a moment where we have all the conservation community and all of us need to raise our voices and try to use the Biodiversity Convention and discussions there for that. We try a little bit in Europe to do that with a 30-30, but it's not enough. We need a much more important, let's say, effort, collective effort, and all our students here and colleagues, I think, should keep that in mind. And thank you for raising that, because it is a good, I believe, it's a good moment to bring it higher in the political agenda, because at least we have to start with the high, let's say, recognition of the biosphere reserves. So at least we have to start from the beginning, bringing the necessary monitoring and the necessary conditions and resources for the biosphere reserves. And we know that these are inadequate throughout the world, not only in the developing countries, but even in the most developed countries. We have many needs. Now, the two last questions I have, the one is on a question about the findings. What are the current findings on increasing salinization of water systems, and are there measures, solutions already taken in biosphere reserves to counteract this issue? First of all, what we said already, both Samuel and myself, is that you have to understand that there is no global guidelines for specific pressures or whatever for the biosphere reserves. So when we are talking about solutions already taken in biosphere reserves, we may discuss case studies. In some case studies, I know they have tried to secure additional fresh waters, and one of the ways to do it is by using actually the treated wastewaters in the system to maintain the salinity. Definitely, saline water and brackish water are parts of many of the biosphere reserves. So it depends very much on the specific type of system. In general, it is true that in general, we observe salinization in many of the biosphere reserves because of the withdrawal of water, groundwater in most cases, and therefore you have, and even with the increase, even the slight increase of the sea surface and the the pressure that we have from saline water helps the intrusion of salt water in groundwater and even in surface water. So there is this tendency throughout. And in many cases, we have limited the resources to address this because, as we said, the fresh water, the available fresh water is decreasing. And because of the climate change, at the same time, we have less and less snow and precipitations. So this phenomenon will affect many of our wetlands, unfortunately, with very limited means to address that, unless, as I mentioned before, we use better management of flood waters and storm waters to keep them and use them during the dry periods. The final question I have is very political, is what is the situation? Will Trump's policies hinder SDGs progress? If so, how can this shift in US policy be countered? What strategies can raise awareness on environmental issues? This, many people have this question now. This is also, is not only Trump, is this period, there are several governments throughout the world that try to save money by reducing investment in the environment, and climate change is not only reducing money, it's also keeping the energy mix as it is and trying to keep the fossil fuels, for many more years. What we can do is to be aware, first of all. We need the knowledge. The knowledge says that the available renewable energies today have very competitive prices. What keeps the fossil fuel are the big subsidies that they receive. And this is something we need, that is in the root of the situation we have. This is one of the things. And what we need is to raise the awareness about the dangers we have with the climate change, the catastrophes we may have if we don't actually use this period. This is the most critical period for adjusting, changing the slope of the curve. I can show you next time. I don't have it right now here, unless Vicky or Iro can find it. I can show you the business as usual, where it takes us the business as usual with the consumption of fossil fuel, where we have managed already with the policies already introduced to reduce actually this trend, and what we can achieve if the pledges we have, including the ones of the United States that now change, could allow us to obtain. If you see this graph, it is an optimistic one because you see that our measures already have impact, and we can use this to demonstrate to everybody that we need to follow the international agreed targets. I hope that Trump or others will understand that at a given moment very soon. In any case, we have to continue, and we have to be vocal, open, and what we are doing is not for us, is for the next generation, the next generations, and for sustainability. This is sustainability. So this is all what I wanted to say. I don't know if Samuel wants to add something, or if some of you have to add something. We have few more minutes, just few minutes to conclude.
Yeah, I think for me, something general, and also just sharing my own opinion. I think there's a lot of questions being raised on whether science should inform diplomacy or diplomacy should inform science. Because I think if I am, the head of a state of a country and there's a huge deposit of diamond in a forest reserve, and I know that by exploring these mineral resources, I'm going to solve poverty by a certain percentage, create jobs, and somebody says you have to keep the forest reserve because we want you to achieve your biodiversity targets. I think it has to be communicated in a way that I will understand that I still need to keep the forest reserve. And I think this is the situation that a lot of political figures, find themselves as to, trying to understand, the opportunity costs, and I think if we are able to provide enough evidence and have alternative solutions, I think this is really very important. I think as scientists, we need to be able to communicate the evidence in such a way that the political figures really understand that if we compromise on the environment, we will have a future that we will never be happy about, And I saw somebody put in the chat very nice statement that political figures they come and go, but once we are persuaded that these are the actions that can lead to a sustainable future, we need to pursue that. And I think the scientific evidence is clear. We need to, conserve the environment. We need to make sure that we preserve our biodiversity. We need to take climate action as an emergency. A lot of, people don't take climate change as an emergency because maybe you have, the adaptive capacity, where when the summer temperatures are very high, you have an air condition, so you don't feel it. So when we talk of climate change, you don't care. But there are some people, that don't have this adaptive capacity, and they are very severely impacted, by climate change. So I think the science must continue to communicate, and hopefully we have scientists like you, Professor Scoullos, who become political figures so that it makes some of this advocacy very easy. Thanks.
We can't hear you, but we will vote for you.
No, actually, I'm conducting policies, but I'm not a politician. This is the most important thing. So, and I'm very glad that we work all together and we are on the same page. And I hope that through also our hybrid university, we transfer not only on knowledge and experience, but also some of our ideas that hopefully will be shared by many of you or all of you. And I would like to say, that from my part, I have concluded.
Yes, I'm afraid we have exhausted both of you with this round of questions. So I'm addressing now the participants. You see that all the matters that you raised during, as you follow the course, are addressed. So I invite you also to follow the lectures of next week, where we delve deeper into the WEF and Nexus approach. So we look in greater detail or these integrated management approaches that we talk about with new guest lecturers. And because I saw many people here from countries that we're not used to, I would like to invite you to write your country before you leave us, because I saw maybe Russia or Italy or Albania. And if you want to write us a note, I think I also, from my part, I want to thank you for your live presence. And I will see you next week.
Okay, thank you all. Bye-bye at the moment.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you
Thanks a
from
lot.
Tunisia.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye,
Excellent session.
everybody.
Thank you.